BJ from Board Game Gumbo here with Gumbo Live. It's season 2, and I've got Brett Sobol of Nauvoo Games talking about their big new game, The Reckoners. I've got a picture of it here on the screen. I'm totally excited for this, Brett. I'm geeking out a little bit here because I saw you guys on Twitter talking about how it was close. I actually visited with you guys at Gen Con, my son and I, Gen Con 2016, where we found out about it. And I just tore through all 3 books by Brandon Sanderson of The Reckoners during the Thanksgiving holidays, and it just got me really excited for this game. So tell me about The Reckoners. How close are we? How excited are you guys about the Kickstarter? And just the elevator pitch of what is the game?
Yeah, I'll start with the game itself. So The Reckoners is going to be a co-op game, a pure co-op game that plays 1 to 6 players, and its mechanics are a lot of simultaneous action selection and dice rolling.
Nice.
So everyone's taking their turn at the same time, and you guys are all acting as different members of the Reckoners team, which for those of you that haven't read the book series, you're essentially like a group of operatives, and your goal is to take down a big bad villain whose name is Steelheart in the series. So over the course of about 75 minutes, you and your fellow Reckoners are going to be managing dice rolls, potentially buying new equipment cards that could give you upgrades to your dice, buying even new dice, kind of creating your own little engine and set of resource management skills that you can employ to ultimately take him down before the city of New Chicago is decimated. So that's a quick bit on the game. What else did you want to know?
Hey, the first thing that I want to talk about is the artwork. I mean, I just couldn't get over this thing. And let me throw up a picture. This stuff is stunning. I'm not sure who did this, if it's the same artist from your other games or not. I'm throwing up a picture of it. It looks like 4 character cards or character art.
Yeah, we have Miguel Coimbra is the illustrator. He is the mad scientist who is behind a couple of very prominent games. You've probably heard of Seven Wonders,
Sure.
and Cyclades. He recently did Outlive, I believe is the name of it.
Sure.
And he has a ton of other credits that are in the top BGG, 200 or 300 or so. Really terrific visionary, and we're delighted to work with him to bring the game to life. From an illustrative perspective. So he's been terrific. And, we're going to have a ton of content with regards to illustrations. So those are only 4 of the epics in the game. Those are all from the book series. But we've got, I think, almost 30 of those size cards. There are tarot size cards that are going to be big illustrations representing these different epics, not to mention, different parts of the city and other things as well.
So Steelheart is not the only epic that's portrayed in the game, then, right?
Right. Steelheart is the big bad epic. And if you want to think of it, he's, got a bunch of lieutenants or, henchmen underneath him, which consist of epics like these here, or his enforcement, which is kind of like his police squad. So that's those are all the different people that you're ultimately playing against in the game.
Yeah, Steve says, haven't read the series, looked up the theme of the books, and it sounds pretty cool. Have to add it to my to-read list. The theme of the series, I'm struggling to talk about it because although it's in the first 5 pages of the book, you kind of figure out part of it. It's a battle between the Reckoners, these agents or operatives, as you said, against the big bads, which are a twist of what we think of who they are. I mean, without spoiling too much, I think that kind of says it. But what I'm curious about is something that Brian Baker on BGG had to say. Is there any spoilers in this game? Can we play this if we haven't read the books yet? Somebody like Steve O'Rourke?
I'm glad you brought up that question. You can certainly play it without having read the series. It won't spoil anything. We were deliberate in choosing not to spoil something because we want to get people engaged with the series and have them read it, pick it up, or listen to it however they want to consume it. It's terrific. To build on what you're saying and what people I guess can find out quickly online. I mean, the book series is primarily around some sort of we'll call it extraterrestrial event, I guess, some crazy one-time event that happens where there's a burst in the sky and a bunch of people develop these superpowers. Right. And then slowly afterward, those people who developed powers turned evil, and the public started calling them epics. These epics sort of rose in power and remade the world in their own image, with the most powerful of them beginning to rule basically city-states as godlike entities. And it wasn't long before, you know, there was altercations between them and the government and everything else, and the world sort of fractured as a result of these superpowered individuals who, in many cases, couldn't be killed, sort of rising to power. The books take place with a young protagonist named David, whose father was killed by Steelheart, who is this head epic at, you know, in the city of New Chicago, which is Chicago in this world. And it really follows his quest for vengeance and finding out there's a lot more in terms of, you know, this whole world of epics, and that's really the quick premise. But it's super exciting, and we've been thrilled to work with Brandon and his team. And in fact, if you are supporting the Reckoners on Kickstarter here in a couple of weeks, we're going to have some exclusive content that was written by Brandon that is not seen anywhere else in any of the books. We're going to have some new bits that we're going to be releasing to our backers as part of some promos. So that'll take the form of some extra epics in the game, as well as, you know, probably some manifestation, maybe a card, or, you know, we have several paragraphs from Brandon on other parts of the world and other epics that he built out a little bit more for us for this campaign.
Hey, JP checking in. Jay does the videos where he actually makes things that can help you with your board game room, or just he does all these crazy things. You got to see some of his videos. It's all kind of projects dealing with board games. And he says, "Good luck, Brett. Good luck, Brett, with your project, guys. Looking pretty slick so far." He is right. This project is looking pretty slick. You guys, I'm not sure if these are prototypes or these are the final versions, but I've been taking a look at some of the things, like, for instance, all the different dice you have here in the game. It looks like individual dice for individual players, maybe? What's going on right here?
Yeah, I'll show you. So there are going to be 42 custom dice in the game, and they're all big chunky dice, 19 millimeter dice. So I mean, if you played like Emotep, you know, they're like the size of those cubes, or if you have the expansion for Stockpile, it's the same size of those dice. They're big chunky dice. So everyone actually has 6 dice to start the game. Some are color coordinated to their player color, and some are more general colored. So these are a sample that we received. We really like the look of it. We're going to maintain this sort of, you know, transparent resin material that you can, you know, it's got the kind of high-techy vibe feel almost to it, more modern-y feel to the dice. So yeah, it is, I mean, primarily a dice rolling and resource, you know, using game.
I remember, is it Firefight from the books?
Yeah.
And I grabbed an image off of BGG. It looks like a tray with Firefight in there.
Yeah, so this is, so the Reckoners is actually not, we're doing something that we've never seen with the game. I know Wasteland Express has done something with regard to these trays, but what we're doing is we're actually going to be taking the board and moving it to a bunch of these miniature trays. So the whole game is going to be taking place among a bunch of different trays. This is what's called a city district tray, and it represents one of the different areas of New Chicago. Rather than putting it on a map or a big game board, we're going to have up to 7 of these different district trays based on the number of players that you play with. Each district tray will have a spot at the top right, because we are going to have miniatures in the game and other things that you're going to have to put up there. And then there's a card that goes in the top left. And you'll notice there's this cool little plastic slider that goes left to right on there. So it's one of the things that's interesting in how the game fights you is that really represents the amount of, we'll call, actions that are charged by these superpower guys. And they will perform all these actions against you every round that they're not, you know, defeated or contained. So you really have to triage a lot of different problems in order to win the game. And at the bottom, what you're seeing are really their health and research tracks. We didn't get too much into this, but the quick bit is that every epic has like a weakness, sort of like a Superman's kryptonite. And the purple track represents, you discovering what that weakness is, which ultimately helps you to defeat them, which is the skull, their health.
Very interesting. I found a couple other ones here that looked familiar. Let's see. Can you see that up there now?
Yeah.
What are we looking at here? It's not a district tray, right?
Nope, that is a player tray. So everyone's
Okay.
going to actually get one of those as well. And you'll notice that there is a bunch of spots at the bottom. So the idea is that the mechanic you're doing every round is dice rolling and sort of like dice keeping in many ways. It's a Yahtzee or maybe a King of Tokyo style where you roll all your dice, you choose one to keep or more than one if you'd like. Re-roll all of them that you didn't keep and continue to do that up to 3 times. So essentially dice rolling and re-rolling, and then you'll lock in your dice in the different spots. And then once everyone has finished rolling their dice, because you're actually doing that simultaneously, all the players will be doing that same sort of mechanic of rolling and keeping. Then you'll all simultaneously spend your dice, and you just spend them by moving them from the bottom of your tray into the middle there with those different sockets. The bottom left of that, you'll notice, has a symbol on it, which is sort of like a wild resource that you can store in that little tray area.
Hannah Doan checking in. Thank you for watching the show. She says, as a fan of the books, I've been super impressed with all the art I've seen so far for the game. And Brett, that raises a pretty good question. People that read these books already have David, and they already have the professor, and they already have, Firefight, and they already have all these characters in their minds. How tough was that translating Brandon's imagination into the artwork for this board game?
That was extremely difficult. I mean, it's something we worked very closely with them on, but for us, it was our first foray into IP. We wanted to be good stewards of their brand and their lore, and to tell you the truth, I feel like I did my homework and combed through every detail of the book, reread it multiple times, looking for painstaking details with anything that talked about how a character looked, was presented, what their mannerisms were, how their powers or whatever manifested. And then ultimately I communicated that to our artist who translated it beautifully. And then I brought it back to them and was like, what do you think? Do you have any feedback? Is something wrong? Does something need to be fixed? And to be frank, because I put in so much work up front, they were like, holy crap, this is awesome. Like, I really appreciated all the work you put into it, because they just loved it. And they said it was some of the best artwork they'd ever seen, especially for any of their books they'd ever done, not just the Reckoners, but any of them. So we're super pumped. And I'm glad that we, invested the time to take good care of it, because I think it's fantastic.
Man, I love talking to people that are passionate, and you are obviously passionate not only about the series, but about the games. But beyond the passion, what was it like working with the Brandon Sanderson team on a game? I mean, on a game based on an IP that you just love. I mean, this is not just a game for you.
So cool, man. It's so cool. I mean, it's one of those things where, you never thought, I don't know, like a couple of years ago when we were thinking about this, it was like, oh, it'll be fun. Let's make like a stock game. Like, that'll be cool. Love, like, I'm a big finance nerd and love that kind of stuff. So awesome. But then it started taking a route to like, oh my gosh, like, we have a chance to, publish an IP. That would be really cool. That would be a lot of fun. Like, we have all these great series and, that we love to read, and we have these great mechanics for games. Why don't we just marry the two? And yeah, it's just been awesome. I guess I never really thought it would happen. And getting a chance to work with somebody like Brandon and his team, who's also really passionate about just bringing his content to his audience in a different way that can engage them, it's been excellent. So super, super cool experience.
Has Brandon played the game?
Brandon himself has not played the game, but several people on his team have. Our goal is obviously to get Brandon to play it pretty soon. Sure. His time's pretty precious, but
yeah, he's got some books to finish.
Yeah, exactly. Not to mention like new ones he's starting. So yeah, he's on our list to get to play the game, and we'll see. But we're excited that we could at least get some exclusive content written for us. So we'll count that as a win. But yeah, I think Brandon will sit down and play this at some point with his team once they get a copy in their hands.
PJ from Board Game Gumbo Live. I've got my guest, Brett from Nauvoo Games. We're talking about the Reckoners coming out on Kickstarter. We forgot to mention the date. When is the Kickstarter starting?
Yeah, so we're slightly changing the date from what's currently on Facebook. We'll be making that announcement tomorrow. So our official date is going to end up being February 13th. We're pushing it back just to, there's some approvals in this whole process with working with an IP, and occasionally that and some, manufacturing and art, just a whole, combination of everything coming together. Sure. Sometimes pushes a Kickstarter back. So we're giving it a little extra buffer just to make sure that everything kind of comes together at the right time. And we're confident that February 13th, everything's ready to go. We'll be making that announcement tomorrow, like I said. Probably
our first scoop on the show.
Yeah, with launching our Kickstarter video, or at least part one of our Kickstarter video, either tomorrow or the day after, just to make it official and give everybody some insight into what this game's gonna be all about.
Steve O'Rourke checking in. He says, do you think that the fact that the books have not yet been adopted into movies or TV shows made the process easier or tougher? The images haven't been spoon-fed to viewers yet, so you aren't copying anything. On the other hand, you also have the reader's unique inner vision to satisfy. True or false? Easier or tougher?
Good question. I think it's been easier. There's more leeway, it feels like, with regards to interpretation. I'm not trying to, I guess I'm not trying to make it exactly fit into this outline, which gives me more room to express my own inner vision in a way and kind of make the characters in the way that almost I see. So in the sense, that's easier. I would say maybe it's harder in a sense that I'm hard on myself to like just going through and looking for those details and, asking some of the questions like why are they going to look that way, and making sure that it's exactly right is really like the whole burden's been, I feel like, on me. So I would say it's easier, but there's definitely some aspects that made it harder, I would say, too.
A couple of other elements I want to look at. Take a look at this one. I've got another tray.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here?
That is a Steelheart board, or what I'll call the Steelheart tray and board. But so what you're seeing is on the left, Steelheart is the big bad guy. So of course he doesn't have just one of those tracks that affects you. He has multiple of them that he's going to hit you with every round. And on the right hand side, there'll actually be two different pieces that go on the far right. One will be a health track like you're seeing, and one will be a research track. So essentially, he has a bolt ton of, research that needs to be done to find his weakness and a lot of damage that needs to be done to ultimately defeat him. So you kind of track it all here. And we built it in such a way that it can be easily modified for difficulty levels. You'll notice the left side is actually comprised of a smaller piece on the left-hand side and a bigger piece on the right-hand side. And that allows you to really customize, how hard you want to play the game, as well as modify it for the big player range that we have, so it'll scale well. In addition, we also have the idea, not quite the exact plan yet, but the idea that this will ultimately be modified as a game to include expansion content for other big epics. As this game primarily takes place in the city of New Congo, our goal would be to introduce the new locations like New Babalar and Ildithia and some of the other prominent cities and high epics that will be missing from this base game.
Cool. All right, we got one more to look at here. Yeah, and I love the idea that you guys are already planning out and working on the content for the expansions, because the way that these modular trays, it seems like it's ripe. It's just ripe for expansion. And then let's see what we're looking at here. All right, so it looks like another view maybe of the minis. Having some technical difficulties. I think we lost Brett there for a second. Let's see if I can get him back. Let's see, Brett. PJ from Board Game Gumbo here. We have some technical difficulties. We lost out on Brett. Let me see if I can get him back here. I've got him in the lobby, but I don't see him coming up here. No, we don't have his picture yet. So we'll keep going on with the show the way it is. So Kickstarter for this The Reckoners. It's an IP from Brandon Sanderson. Game designed by Brett Sobol and Seth Van Orden from Nauvoo Games. It's coming out on Kickstarter. We just got the word from Brett Sobol on February 13th. So we are going to definitely mark that to take a look at it. He's our special guest, Brett Sobol. Let's see if we can get him back up, but I still don't see him here. Apologize about the technical difficulties. I'm not sure what's happening. Yeah, I think we are losing Brett there. Yeah, it's just yeah, that's right, Steve. Looks like just a still image. Yeah, sorry. So Steve's got a couple of comments. Love the design of the offset angled cube track. That's one of the first things I noticed, Steve. Instead of just being straight trays, and they look like game trays type things. It's got these offset or twisted or turned around different little cubes, all in different sizes, they're in different shapes. It's really striking on the table. I can't wait to see that. Drew Bradshaw checking in here. Drew says, oh my goodness, just saw this, so excited. Did you guys go over how it plays and such? We did. Brett came on earlier and talked a little bit about how the game, and let me see, while we're waiting for him to come back, let me see if I can show you some of the things that we showed, Drew. The first thing I'm going to show you is some of that awesome card art, man. Drew, take a look at this. This is all representative of some of the Epic's lieutenants. You remember from the book series that guys like Steelheart, who were really powerful, had people that were less powerful that were working for them with special powers. And I mean, this artwork is just gorgeous. There's another one that he showed us that kind of shows how the game, it's basically simultaneous dice rolling. So all of the players are actually playing at the same time, developing their own special powers as the individual reckoners, and all going after the different little lieutenants. And once you get past the lieutenants, finally going after the big bad. Hoping to get up. I think we got Brett back there. Hold on just 1 second. Hey, he's back. Hey, Brett.
Sorry about that. My computer unexpectedly died on me. It must not have been fully plugged in, so I just fired it up here on my phone. Apologize for that.
Just as soon as you stepped out, we had a flurry of questions, so I've been trying to answer them as best I can. Drew Bradshaw is really excited about it, and I went over a little bit about the gameplay with him. But Steve Espinoza, and thanks, Drew, for checking in on the show, but Steve Espinoza has yeah, that's right, Steve. We got some success. We got Brett back. Steve has a great question. We didn't talk about the price point or if there's going to be any preview pages for the Kickstarter like some projects do. Sorry if this has already been asked. He's a little bit late, but he's a big fan of the author and the IP. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm hoping you can do, Brett. I'm hoping you can bring not only board gamers to the table, but also fans of Brandon Sanderson who are also gamers, but maybe haven't been exposed to the hobby games that you and I have been playing.
Yeah, I mean I think that's our dream in terms of designing this. We're using that King of Tokyo dice rolling type of system that will be familiar to gamers, but it's not hard to grasp. But the game has a ton of depth to it in terms of the decisions you make without going, without overburdening new gamers. I would say, would a group of casual players pick up this game by themselves and go learn it? I think that they could. Would a group of strategic gamers who like tough co-ops find it challenging? I think that they would. I think there's different difficulties levels and setups that would intrigue them and engage them. And it plays fast. It is a simultaneous game where people are constantly doing something. And I think it's another friendly element of the design that will cater to really that different range of people that we're designed for.
So Steve has two questions. Do you know a price point? And is there a preview page that's going to be posted up pretty quickly?
Yeah, preview page will probably take another week before it's posted. I can tell you for certain it'll be up by January 29th. I think it'll be up by next week. As far as a price point goes, we are estimating our MSRP on the game to be between probably 60 and 80. I would say I'm leaning closer to the 70 mark. but it's going to depend. I'm waiting on some final quotes with all the new trays and everything to kind of figure out where it's going to land. And then on Kickstarter, we'll usually offer it for $10 less, so you can expect a deal there. I would say on Kickstarter you could see the base game going for $59, maybe $69 for the game. But we're gonna we plan to have a deluxe version of the game, as well as potentially we'll call it an epic version of the game.
Nice.
So the deluxe version will turn all of the various resource components into metal, of course for Steelheart.
I like it.
And the final epic version will have the option, I believe, to do pre-painted miniatures for all these guys. So we're gonna have miniatures for each of the players, as well as Steelheart himself. Plus, there's about 25 enforcement miniatures, which are like some soldiers, like I said, the police force that Steelheart has. So overall, about 30 different miniatures that could be pre-painted.
Chris Strain, the designer of Asking for Troubles, says, "Hey, looks great," and he's not asking if you have any blue or orange components. So that must be a good deal. I can tell you, Chris and Steve Espinoza, that if you've ever played Stockpile, the base game of Stockpile, when you pull it out of the box for a brand new gamer, you're going to impress people. I'm giving you guys kudos, and this is just me offering it. If the Reckoners looks anything like your other games have been, you guys are going to really impress people. So
thanks.
Hey, we sold one already. The Kickstarter hasn't started, and Steve Espinoza says, "Count me in for an epic version. Thanks for answering my questions. The design looks amazing." Hey, Drew Bradshaw has a question for you. Powers, will it be associated with the lieutenants and the high epics, or is it randomized with the art? And are they all powers that we've seen before? I'm assuming he means from the books.
Okay. So the powers are pre-assigned to epics. So the powers are meant to sort of capture at least some part of the the epic in the book series without overcomplicating it, right? Okay. Some of the powers of these epics and some of their weaknesses in particular are particularly, they really are challenging to put into any sort of game form. So the powers you'll see and the abilities that they do during the game are streamlined, simplified, but yet will, kind of capture something. So to give you an example of what I'm talking about, somebody like a Fault Line, as an example, who is one of the epics in the book series, and this is not a spoiler, one of the epics in the book series who can move, Earth, essentially like earthquake type of style. She'll have the ability to, not only hurt the city's population, but also erect like barricades, making it harder to move around the city. So sure. Just sort of a thematic thing that we believe encaptures part of her power. So hopefully that answers your question with the pairing of the powers with the epics. I think there was a second part to that question too, but I don't have it displayed on my screen anymore.
Are they all powers that we've seen before?
Yes, thank you. Yes, so they are. I'll say that they are all powers mentioned or seen. The number of characters, at least the number of epic characters in the book series that are fully developed, it was not quite enough for a game. So we took some liberty with the with the different epics. So just to give you an example, there's never like there's never anything more than like the mention of like a water or a fire or a lightning epic or something like that. The firefight, sure, but I'm just saying they weren't fully kind of developed as a main character, but the concept of what it was very apparent. So we, sort of took that under the, the guise of this theme and this brand and developed it into a character. So yes, you're gonna see stuff that is new in terms of like what the book is, talking about and the characters therein, but the powers are going to, kind of all translate back again into the simplified, streamlined game version.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo, my guest here tonight, Brett Sobol from Nauvoo Games, talking about the Reckoners. I got one last picture to show you, and it's up on the screen. That's the one that we had before you got cut off. It looks like an early prototype maybe of some of the minis. So this is a game that some of the fans might not know is going to have minis in this game right away, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, like I mentioned, there's six. There's a player for each, or miniature for each player. So 6 player minis. You'll have a miniature for Steelheart, and then you'll have up to 25 miniatures for the enforcement. So really, the miniatures all move around to the different city districts. Steelheart moves every turn. Enforcement are laid out in different areas depending on the epics that come with them and or where Steelheart moves, and then the players obviously move around themselves. So lots of miniatures. Lots of stuff. And yes, the image looks like a pretty early, well, we have art in there. So that's probably from an unpub that I was at. Maybe a play at Gen Con, but it looks like an unpub.
Yeah, I'm glad Nauvoo Games, you guys love 6-player games. You are people after my own hearts, man. Because, I mean, 4-player games are great, but sometimes I got 5 or 6 at the table.
That's right. I guess the goal in our minds would be get as many people to play your game as possible without sacrificing the integrity of the design. And, we reached that point with Stockpile, I felt like, where we strongly considered adding a 6th player into it. And we messed around with it for, months, I feel like. And ultimately, we made the call that, unfortunately, it was just one of those things we just, we couldn't figure out, we'll call it a good way to do it.
You need to talk to Chris Strain. He's got a 7-player game, Asking for Troubles, and it plays as quick, 7, as it does 3 or 4. It's amazing if you haven't played Asking for Troubles yet.
I have not. So I'll have to look into it, but he probably understands the design challenge there. Where
I'm just picking.
where it's hard to design for those big player counts as well as the small ones. It's a big challenge.
You guys did a good job with the 5-player count in Stockpile. I mean, I played it at 2, 3, 4. Well, no, not 2, but I played it at 3, 4, and 5, and it plays equally as well with all 3 of those play counts. I don't think I played it at 2 though.
2 is interesting. In fact, I would say we designed largely for 2 players because most commonly we're playing with our spouses, and it's one of the things that needs to stand up on its own for us.
Sure.
And for Stockpile, it was a big thing. I mean, I probably played 50 2-player games of Stockpile, and we made a system for an auction bidding perspective to make it work for 2 players, and the main mechanic we used there, I don't know if it's a mechanic per se, but the dynamic we used is that we staggered the information. So, one of the big challenges you have during the game is deciding what to do with your cards and your information, despite it being a subset of the larger picture. And if in a 2-player game, when you have a larger purview of the market, it would be super advantageous to kind of make this big combo play, but then you're kind of using too much info during the process, so you kind of get it in pieces, and half the time, the second time after you've already made your first decision, you think about it and you go, oh crap, like I wish I knew this before I just did that, because now it doesn't make any sense. So sure. That's part of the fun.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, Gumbo Live. Got Brett Sobol here. Drew Bradshaw's got another question. Will we see lots of replayability like what some of the Cthulhu gods do in some games to make it feel like a different experience? I feel like the way that you guys have designed it with the different lieutenants coming out, in addition to the big bad, there's going to be a lot of replayability.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, everything will... So let me say this. Steelheart himself, he has 4 power bars, okay? They all are changed by virtue of which epics are out, meaning that some of the epics can, his lieutenant epics can cause, we'll call his blue power track, which is kind of like his ability to disrupt like the city and make it harder to move around in, or could impact his red bar, which is the one that generates how many enforcement come out every turn. Either of those could go up, and there's 2 others that can go up just depending on the number of epics. So from the very beginning, you can face a Steelheart that is very different from the game that you just played, where he was only doing his yellow tracks, and something very basic like that. But all the different permutations of epics that can come out, the placement that they're in, the different reckoners that you have, the different equipment cards that you purchase, all of it has added kind of additive value to make it very replayable.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo here. My guest Brett Sobol from Nauvoo Games. We're talking the Reckoners coming out. We just found out on February 13th with Kickstarter. Got a couple of more questions. we sold another epic version. Drew Bradshaw is very excited. He says, "My poor wallet." Hey, we're delivering the goods here, Brett. We're delivering the goods here. I do have another question for you. Steve Espinoza, and thanks, Drew Bradshaw, for checking in. Steve says, will there be multiple sculpts for enforcement for the price? I wouldn't blame you if they're all the same, but he is curious about the multiple skulls. That would be pretty tough at that price point, right?
Well, tell you the truth, it's probably going to be a stretch goal. We've contemplated it, but it's certainly something we can do when volume reaches a certain point, because we're just really the only additive piece is mold cost at that point, and so it's something we'll probably have packed in for stretch goals. I'd say early to middle through the campaign, so you can expect that.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo live here with Brett Sobol of Nauvoo Games talking the Reckoners. Brett, the last thing we do here on Gumbo Live is the envie game. To play the envie game, you just got to think of a game. It's a Cajun word that means a hankering or a really strong desire. What's that game right now that if the computer froze up again and you had a couple hours to kill, and whether it's a game you own, a game you want to own, a game you've never played, or a game you want to play all the time, think of a game, and Steve and Drew and Chris Strain, if he's still on there, we'll try to figure it out. We'll ask you 20 questions and try to narrow it down. Look, there's only about 9 or 11,000 games on BGG, so it shouldn't be that hard to figure out this game, right?
Yeah, okay.
All right, don't tell us, though.
Okay.
Here's another guy, Ravi Persal, who is checking in, says, I'm absolutely going to get the epic version. How hard was it to balance a character that is basically limitless, all-powerful, and distill it into the proper gameplay?
Yeah.
That's we could probably do a whole show just on that question, Brett.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a great question.
That is a great question.
I would say the hardest part, probably the hardest part of this design was looking at Steelheart, and I'm assuming that's what you're referring to by all-powerful and limitless. And what we were doing was scrutinizing him and his impact on the game, and we redesigned it probably 5-6 times. And sorry, there's a pop-up there, but I ultimately 5 or 6 different design iterations on what is Steelheart's impact on the game. How do we change it, make it more big boss? How do we make it more meaningful without throwing off the balance at 1 to 6 different players? And how is it intuitive and how is it streamlined? And we really asked ourselves a lot of questions during these designs. And one of the things that I think is beautiful about how this manifested is what I'll call created this sort of it's almost vanilla to me at this point, but it's certainly not. Is this system where there's 4 bars, there's 4 different power tracks, and depending on the high epic in the game, or Steelheart or Regalia or some of the other ones that will potentially come into the expansions as big bosses, you're going to have the ability to customize these bars, potentially add in some of the new mechanics we already designed and play tested without messing up the core system that we ultimately came away with. So I would view very much the Reckoner's base game as an exploration into the Reckoner's universe with the opportunity to build on it with more expansion content. That's not going to throw off the balance or anything. It's just going to dive you deeper into this world.